Hi everybody, so today we're going to be talking about the circle of Willis. And basically the circle of Willis is not really a circle, it's shaped more like a home plate. And it can be found on the base of the brain. And what the function of the circle of Willis is to basically distribute blood throughout the brain. Now, the other thing that the circle of Willis will do, and where it comes in very important, is if someone's having a stroke, the circle of Willis will allow blood to get around the area that might have been broken or clogged that is causing the stroke, which can still then supply blood to parts of the brain and minimize the damage from a stroke. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off just showing the aortic arch and showing you where the arteries come from. I do have a whole video that's on the aortic arch. But let's go ahead and take a look. So if we go like this, if I draw this as my aortic arch right here, I'm going to write aortic arch. All right, and then I have this here. That's my aortic arch. The first artery to come off the aortic arch is going to be the brachiocephalic artery. Okay, the brachiocephalic artery is going to be the first one to come off. This doesn't have anything to do with the circle of Willis, but however, coming off of here, I have another artery that's going to come off of here, and this is called the right common carotid artery. Okay, so there's my right common carotid artery. Now, the next one that comes off of here is going to be called the right vertebral artery. So it's the right vertebral artery, right there, okay? Now, coming off the center of the arch, I'm going to do this one in red too because it's also a carotid artery. We have a left common carotid, this is going to be, if we have a right common carotid, this is going to be my left common carotid artery, okay? And so we have two common carotids. We have a right and left common carotid artery that are coming off, or that are down here by the aortic arch. This comes off the brachiocephalic artery. This comes directly off the aortic arch. Now, on the other side, we are going to have an artery that comes off the aortic arch, and this is called the left subclavian artery. And this is not going to play a role other than the fact that I'm just showing it coming off of there. But what's important about this is I am going to have another artery that's going to come off of here. And if you remember just a minute ago, we talked about the right vertebral artery. Well, over here, I'm going to have the left vertebral artery. Okay, so there's my left vertebral artery. So now, let's talk about the role that these play in the circle of Willis. So the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to talk about our two common carotid arteries. So they are going to come up like this, and they're going to go up in the neck, and then they're going to do what we call bifurcate. Bifurcate means they're going to split into two. So this is going to come in like this. All right, and then I have another portion that comes in like this. And this here, these are going to be our external carotid arteries. Okay, these are not going to play a role in the circle of Willis. Okay, so what they're going to do though is, if you notice, they're actually on the inside. These are actually going to go, they're going to take off and go out this way. Okay, so now, and they actually continue up. I'm just drawing them like that so I can just get them out of the way. My internal carotids will continue to go up. All right, so here comes my internal carotids. And they're going to continue to go up. So I'm going to write internal carotid. All right, there's an internal carotid artery. And there's an internal carotid artery. Okay? And then what these are going to do is they are going to come up and go off to the side. And they come up and they go off to the side. So now, here's what's going to happen. This is actually now on the inside of our circle of Willis, the internal carotid arteries, okay? The first thing that's going to happen is we are going to have an artery that comes down off of the internal carotid artery. All right, and there's one part, and here's the other part. And these are going to be called our posterior communicating artery. So this is the posterior communicating artery. And this is also known as the posterior communicating artery, right here, okay? So now, here's what's going to happen, is I have this right vertebral artery and I have this left vertebral artery. They are going to come up and they are going to come together. And this is kind of an exaggeration, but they're going to come together. And like this, okay, they come up, they travel through the neck, and then they're going to come together. And when they come together, they are going to form something called the basilar artery. Okay, so this is going to be my basilar artery right there. Coming off my basilar artery, I'm going to have two more arteries. This is also going to bifurcate into what we call the posterior cerebral artery. So this is the posterior cerebral artery right here. And this would also be the posterior cerebral artery right here. Okay? So you can see my posterior communicating arteries are going to connect to my posterior cerebral arteries. Okay? And I'm going to erase this right here. So I can put down that these are the posterior cerebral right here also. Now, the next thing that's going to happen is up in here. What's going to happen is I am going to have an artery that comes off of this internal carotid right here. So let me get my brown right here. And coming off of here, now what's going to happen is this now bifurcates and goes like this and comes up like this. So this, right where this comes off, is basically the end of the internal carotid artery. Okay, and I'm going to draw this going out a little bit further here. So again, this is my internal carotid arteries. There and there, right? Where you see the brown now that's coming off of there, this is going to be called my anterior cerebral artery. And over here, it's also the anterior cerebral artery. Okay, and it goes all the way up to here. Okay, so now here's the thing: is I now have these portions of what was my internal carotid arteries. So those are going to be called the middle cerebral arteries, and they play no role in the circle of Willis. Okay, so that's a middle cerebral artery. This is also a middle cerebral artery. But it's just to show you what happens to the internal carotid artery that's right there. Okay, so now, here's the thing. If you notice, there's also a little opening right there. So now, you're going to have another artery that's going to connect these two. And this artery that's connecting those two is going to be called my anterior communication artery. Okay, so if you notice, I have a posterior communicating artery down here. Right, I have a posterior communicating artery down here. I have the posterior cerebral arteries here. I have an anterior cerebral artery that's right in here. I have an anterior communicating artery right up in here. So that's the circle of Willis. So just to make sure we know what it is, right? See how it's kind of making a circle here? All of this, it's making a circle. So if I were to have like a stroke right here, I could actually get blood still through several areas from here because of the fact that it could go around that area. So this is my circle of Willis that's going through right here. And again, it's at the base of the brain. So now, the arteries that are going to make up, just to summarize, the arteries that are going to make up my circle of Willis, okay? They're going to be, well, let's take a look. I have my posterior cerebral artery. Okay, there's the posterior cerebral artery. Let's move this over just a little bit more. I have my posterior communicating artery. Okay, so my posterior communicating artery, let's move that over even just a little bit more. All right, and then we have the internal carotid artery. Okay, and then after the internal carotid artery, we're going to have the anterior cerebral artery. And then last but not least, we are going to have our anterior communicating artery. Okay, so you can see it's basically made up of 5 different arteries. There's 2 of each one. And again, it forms a circle, so that way blood can be delivered around the brain. So that's basically it for our circle of Willis, and thank you so much for watching.